So weaning has already started on lots of suckler farms in the UK and Ireland, and calves like these behind me will be heading for the marts in the coming months. But what should the person who buys those calves be thinking from a quarantine dose point of view? So the idea of a good quarantine dose is, number one, that we clean the animal out for their own well-being, but also that we don't want to introduce any new worm populations into our farm. And very importantly, we're definitely not going to introduce any resistant worm populations into our farm. In terms of picking a product, the idea is that we go for something that the animal would not have seen a lot of from a product point of view, because chances are that will knock out any resistant worms that are in the animal at the moment, okay? So it's probably not going to be an ivermectin, because cattle farmers in the UK and Ireland love ivermectins because they're so cheap and so easy to use. So for me, that's a white wormer, a benzimidazole, something like Albex, for a couple of reasons. It'll also knock out a liver fluke, an adult liver fluke, and it's ovicidal, so it'll kill eggs in the system as well. So we're probably going to give the animal 24 hours after they arrive, just to settle down, just to acclimatise after the trip or the stress of the mart. Then we're going to go in with our product, and we're going to give them 2 days in the shed after that, because any eggs that are left at the end of the digestive tract that wouldn't have been exposed to the dose, just in case they're resistant, let's shed them in our yard and not out onto our pasture, okay? Then we want to go to a dry field that there's a low chance of having liver fluke habitats in, because again, if there's any resistant fluke in our animal, we don't want them to proliferate. And we want that field to be dirty, so to have had cattle in it within the last couple of months. So the idea behind my dirty pasture, and by a dirty pasture I don't mean one that's all cut up, the idea behind my dirty pasture is that if there happens to be some resistant worms left in our animal, i.e. the ones that the dose didn't kill, and I put those cattle onto a clean pasture with no other worm larvae on it, fairly soon the only larvae on that pasture are going to be resistant worm larvae. So if there's already some larvae on it that I know are that work with my farm that aren't resistant to the dose, and I put those cattle with the resistant worms in them, at least there'll be a dilution of that, and the onset of resistance on my farm will be much slower, and it won't be a field of exclusively resistant larvae.